The afternoon sun drifted through Thethan clouds as Hu Yen and Dee walked side by side toward the courthouse, their footsteps slow, carrying the weight of years gone by. He looked at her and said softly, "After today, maybe everything will finally be clear." She nodded, her eyes quiet, but full of unspoken words. What awaited them inside was not just a piece of paper, but the closing of one chapter and the trembling hope of, "Welcome to today's episode, Juan, and to go to court for the divorce. Success or failure." Morning unfolded slowly over the small valley, the air still carrying a hint of dew from the night before. Inside Thewooden house, sunlight filtered through thin bamboo blinds, drawing long golden lines across the table where Hun sat tying her hair. The faint aroma of rice porridge simmering on the stove mingled with the chirping of She looked at Maya, who was carefully spooning breakfast into her mouth, and spoke softly, her voice both calm and thoughtful. "This afternoon, Mummy and Uncle D have to go to the Sweetheart, we'll finish picking persimmons this morning, then go." Her words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, gentle yet weighted with something unsaid. D, sitting nearby polishing his motorbike helmet, lifted his head and replied, "We should finish early so we won't be late for their hearing." He spoke lightly, but there was a quiet firmness in his tone, as if had prepared himself for this day long ago. Maya looked up, her big eyes. "Uncle D, can I go with you?" she asked with innocent eagerness. One smiled faintly, walking over to brush a strand of hair from her daughter. "Not today, darling. You have to go to school and be good. Mummy and Uncle will come home early. Okay?" Maya nodded, still chewing Willethy. Morning light glowed softly around her like a halo. Wien glanced toward window where the sunlight caught the curve of Dee's shoulders. For a brief second, their eyes met, hers thoughtful, his steady and reassuring. He said, "Let's make this a good day. Hun. Whatever happens later, at least we did our best." She nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips, though her finger still trembled slightly as she packed Maya's school bag. Outside, the sound of roosters echoed from the Nibarian, mingling with the smell of ripe fruit drifting in from the orchard. It was a morning like any other, yet beneath its calm surface, a quiet anticipation stirred, the kind that comes before something long awaited, both an ending and a beginning. The morning breeze carried the soft scent of earth as Wien and Day walked Maya to school. The little girl clung to Hoon's hand, her backpack bouncing lightly against her shoulders, her loader mingling with the rhythmic crunch of dry leaves beneath their feet. The road shimmered faintly under the tender sunlight, and from afar their schoolyard echoed with children's voices, bright and carefree. When they reached the gate, one bent down, adjusted Mia's collar, and kissed her forehead. "Study well, my love. Mummy will come early to pick you up," she whispered. Maya nodded her small face. "Bye, Mummy. Bye, Uncle Day," she called out, waving until the two figures disappeared from her sight. As Thea turned toward the winding road leading up the mountain, Des started the old motorbike, its gentle hum blending with the rustling of the trees. The sky above stretched wide and blue, stir with drifting white clouds. The road climbed slowly, curving through rows of bamboo and wildflowers that brushed against their legs whenever the wind shifted. Huhan sat behind him, one hand lightly resting on the edge of the seat, her eyes following the hills rolling into the distance. "The weather's beautiful," Dady said over the hum of Thenjin, his tone soft but cheerful. "Theppermans must be ripe by now." Hoyen leaned slightly forward so he could hear. "Yes, the season's just right. Maybe if we're lucky, this harvest will help us buy new clothes for Maya." Her voice carried a quiet hope. "Fragile but warm," Dee nodded, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "After today, everything will be easier," he said, his words half lost in Thuand. "When the divorce is settled, we can both start again." Wien didn't answer right away. The thought lingered, weaving through the sound of Thema Torbic and the whisper of the talk. She looked at the back of his shirt, slightly faded from the sun, and for a moment felt an ache of tenderness couldn't name. The air grew cooler as they the valley spreading below like a painted landscape, patches of green fields, red-tiled roofs, and silver streams glimmering under the sun. She breathed in deeply, the smell of pimmon blossoms already faintly present in "Let's make today a good memory," she finally said, her voice steady, almost like a prayer. Dee smiled without turning round. "We will. he replied simply, and the motorbike carried them onward, its sound fading into the soft murmur of the mountain road. The road narrowed as they reached the foot of the mountain orchard, where rows of pimmon trees stretched endlessly across the slopes, their branches heavy with glowing orange fruit. The noon sun spilled over the leaves, turning each fruit into a small lantern swaying in the breeze. Cicadas buzzed lazily in the background, and the earthy scent of ripe fruit mingled with their scent of the trees. Juan shaded her eyes with one hand, scanning the orchard where a man in a broad straw hat was stacking bamboo baskets. That must be the owner, T said, parking the motorbike side a low stone wall. They walked over the dry grass, crackling softly under their feet. The man looked up, smiling, his weathered face tanned by years of sun. "You two here too, bye?" he asked, wiping his hands on his shirt. Juan returned his smile, her voice polite but warm. "Yes, sir. We'd like to pick the morsels if that's alright. We'll take quite a few kilos." The man chuckled, squinting toward the sun. "Pick as many as you want. Just be careful not to knock them down too much. 18,000 a kilo if you do the work yourselves." Juan glanced at D. "That's fair, sir. Thank you." They adjusted the bamboo basket over his shoulder and grinned. "We'll take good care of the trees. Promise," the owner waved them toward the upper rows, his voice fading behind them. "Go on then. The best ones are near the old rock wall, sweet as honey." They walked into the orchard, the ground soft with fallen leaves that crunched beneath their sandals. Sunlight filtered through thick canopy, flickering across Hu Yen's hair, making it shimmer like threads of. She reached out to touch a low-hanging branch, feeling the cool, smooth skin of a ripe pine under her. Day stood beside her, watching quietly as the breeze lifted a few stray strands of her hair. "They look perfect," she murmured, "almost too beautiful to pick." D smiled, his tone edged. "Then we'll do it carefully, one by one." In the stillness of the orchard, with only the whisper of leaves and the distant hum of bees, there was a sense of peace, fragile and fleeting, yet deeply real. The afternoon sun leaned gently over, draping the orchard in a soft golden hue, between rows of trees heavy with fruit. Juan climbed a wooden ladder while Des steadied it below, his hands gripping the worn rungs with quiet care. The air was filled with the faint sweetness of pim, the dry rustle of leaves, and the distant murmur of wind brushing through the hills. A few bees hovered lazily nearby, glinting like tiny sparks in the light. From above, one reached toward a branch laden with plump orange fruit. "Hold the ladder tight. I'm going higher," she said, her voice trembling slightly with both caution and laughter. "I got it," D replied from below, glancing up, the sunlight catching on the sweat along his temple. "You're safe. Just take your time." The basket beside him was already half full, the fruit glistening like polished amber. One by one, Huan plucked the pimmons and passed them down, their skins smooth and cool against her palms. The quiet rhythm of their work became a kind of music, the soft snap of stems, the rustle of leaves, the gentle thud of fruit landing in the basket. Juan smiled as a breeze swept through, carrying the scent of ripe fruit. "It's been a long time since you've felt this calm," she said softly, glancing down at him. "Life's been noisy for so long. I almost forgot how quiet happiness feels." D looked up, shading his eyes, his expression tender. "After today, maybe things will feel less little," he said. "You deserve that peace." And she lingered a moment, her gaze resting on him, the light flickering across her face. "And you?" she asked. "What do you deserve?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Maybe the same thing. A simple day like this, beside someone who understands." The words hung between them, delicate asked, drifting dust in the sunlight. Hyen looked away, pretending to focus on Thelis' branch, though her fingers slowed as if savoring each touch. The sun dipped lower, painting the orchard in a warm honey-cold glow. When the final basket was filled, they both stood quietly for a moment, breathing in the scent of earth and fruit, the silence stretching between them like a promise, unspoken, yet deeply felt. By the time they reached the the sun had begun its descent, casting a warm amber glow across the narrow street. The air was alive with chatter and the mingled scents of grilled corn, fresh herbs, and dust stirred by passing feet. Juan and D set her baskets down by an empty stall near the edge of the market, arranging ripe pimmons into neat piles. Their skins gleamed under the light, smooth and orange like small suns. Des straightened up, wiping his brow with back of his hand as the first customers drifted over. "These look for..." a woman in a floral hat remarked, reaching out to touch one. Juan smiled, her tone warm but modest. "Picked this morning, ma'am. 20,000 a kilo and they are sweet all the way through." The woman nodded, choosing a few her bracelets, clinking as coins changed hands. The sound felt soft and satisfying, like a bell signaling the start of something hopeful. Soon more people gathered, drawn by the color and the scent. The baskets emptied slowly, the voices around them blending into a rhythm of small talk and laughter. A breeze carried the smell of roasted peanuts and smoke. And Huhon glanced at Dee, her eyes reflecting the quiet joy oft moment. "Looks like we'll sell of everything today," she said, gentlying the cloth around the last few piments. Dee smiled, his hands busy stacking empty baskets. "Yeah, we did it. Enough talk over the trip and maybe a bit left over for Maya." One laughed softly, the sound light and tender. "She'll be happy. Maybe buy her that little pink scarf." Da's eyes softened as he looked at her, the afternoon light catching in his gaze. "You should. She looked beautiful in it, just like her mother." Wien paused for a moment, thy compliment lingering in the air between them like the faint sweetness of thy moment surrounded them. The market slowly thinned, the golden hour deepening into shades, afros and amber. They gathered the coins into a small cloth bag, handing it to her. "We sold out," he said simply, his voice low, but full of quiet pride, enough to move on. Hua nodded, her fingers brushing his briefly as she took. "Thank you too for helping me for everything." He looked away, pretending to focus on the empty baskets, but Thephanet's smile tugging at the corner of his lips betrayed the warmth beneath his. The day's work was done, yet something in the air felt unfinished. As if both of them knew the harvest wasn't just of fruit, but of something deeper, waiting to ripen in its own time. The afternoon light slanted across the yard when they returned home, soft and golden, wrapping everything in a quiet calm. The sound of their footsteps mingled with the chirping of crickets overhung in the tall grass. Inside Thea was cool and smelled faintly of rice and sundried clothes. Huhan set the small bundle of money on the table, then began folding away the cloth that had carried piments. Day washed his hands at the water jar, his reflection rippling funnily in the surface as if mirroring thoughts he didn't speak. The house felt peaceful yet heavy with the awareness of what awaited them later. One ladled rice into 2 bowls, her movements slow, deliberate. "You must be hungry," she said softly. "Eat something before we go." Dad nodded, sitting opposite her. "Yeah, we'll need strength," he said with a small laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. The two ate quietly, only the clinking of chopsticks breaking this. After a while Wien looked up, watching him change into a the white fabric slightly wrinkled but carefully buttoned. "Are you nervous?" she asked, her voice gentle but tinged with concern. Dawes adjusting his collar in their reflection of the window pane. "Not really," he said after a moment, more like relieved. 3 years is a long time to wait for something to end. His tone was calm, yet there was an ache beneath it, a trace of the exhaustion carried through those years. Hoyan leaned against the doorframe, arms folded loosely, her eyes soft. "I'm glad you're redoing this," she murmured. "You've been holding on too long. It's time to let go." Dee smiled faintly, glancing at her. "I think you're right. After today, maybe you'll finally breathe easier." A light breeze drifted in, carrying the scent of wet soil and fallen leaves. The clock ticked gently on the wall, marking the slow passage of time. Wien took a folded piece of paper from the table, some documents Dee had left ready for the court, and handed them to him carefully. Their fingers brushed. "Brief but..." "Let's go," she said quietly. "The sooner it's over, the sooner you can start again." Dee nodded, slipping the papers into a worn folder. "Thank you, Wien," he said simply, his voice low but full of meaning. Outside the sun was lowering toward Houston Hills, its light spreading like liquid amber across the ground. As they stepped out and locked the wooden door behind them, the small house seemed to hold its breath. Watching them go, 2 people walking side by side, moving toward an ending that might, in some acquired way, also be a beginning. The courthouse stood at the edge of its pale yellow walls glowing under the late afternoon sun. The air inside was still filled with the faint smell of paper, polished wood, and the distant echo of footsteps on the tiled floor. Huan and Dee walked slowly down the corridor, their shadows long and close beside each other. When they entered the courtroom, the space felt both vast and quiet, the kind of silence that carried weight of people's stories. The ceiling fans turned lazily above, stirring the air in slow rhythmic circles. Dee stood before the bench, hands clasped loosely. The folder of documents took it under one arm. Huan sat behind him, her fingers intertwined on her lap, her heart beating in a measured rhythm, shackled and quite controlled. The preceding judge, a middle-aged man with calm eyes, adjusted his glasses and began in a steady voice. Mr. Day, you confirmed your wife has been absent for 3 years without contact. Day nodded once, his voice firm though quiet. Yes, sir. She left our home 3 years ago. I tried calling her back, even sent word through her parents, but she never returned. I asked her to sign the divorce papers. She refused. The judge glanced down at the file, flipping a page. The court has received confirmation from village chief, verifying Harib's. Given this, we will proceed with the unilateral dissolution. Day breathed out slowly, his shoulders lowering slightly, though his face remained composed. The judge continued, his tone even, regarding joint property. It will be divided equally since your wife is not present. Her portion will be held in care by her parents. For a moment, there was on lithe faint rustle of paper. Then Dee spoke again, softly but clear. I understand, sir. I have no objection. I only wish for closure for both of us. His words lingered in the air, quiet and sincere. The judge nodded once. Very well, the court acknowledges their request. This session is concluded. The gavel struck lightly, a sound both final and strangely gentle. Huan felt her throat tighten as she watched Daohe's head slightly in gratitude before turning back. Their eyes met, his filled with a tired calm, hers glistening with unspoken empathy. As they stepped out of the courtroom, the fading sunlight spilled through the tall windows, washing the hallway in a muted gold. Outside, the world felt open again, the noise of the town returning slowly. Amateur bike passing, a child laughing somewhere far off. Dee exhaled, a long breath he seemed to have been holding for years. It's done, he said quietly, almost to himself. Huan nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. It was over, and for the first time in a long while, the word over didn't sound like loss. It sounded like peace. The sun was dipping low behind the hills. They stepped out of the courthouse. The lights soft and amber like honey spilling across the street. The air felt lighter now, touched by the faint smell of smoke from the food stalls nearby and the rustle of dry leaves brushing against the pavement. Day walked beside Huan, neither of them speaking for a while, their silence gentle rather than heavy. The long day had left a kind of stillness between them, a quiet understanding. Finally, one broke the silence, her voice low but warm. We should buy something nice for dinner, maybe a chicken to roast, she said, glancing at him with a small smile. Dee looked over, a faint gleam of relief in his eyes. Yeah, he said, it's been a day worth, let's make it a good one. They turned down a narrow lane where vendors were closing up their stores, the glow of kerosene lamps flickering on the wooden counters. The scent of fresh herbs and roasted peanuts mingled in the cool dusk air. A woman stood behind ackerjegs filled with chickens, their feathers ruffling softly in the Huan crouched beside the cage, her hand hovering above the restless bird. This one looks healthy, she said. We'll take it. Day paid, exchanging a few quiet words with the vendor before taking the chicken by its tight feet, holding it carefully so it wouldn't. It'll make a fine dinner, he said, the corners of his mouth lifted. They walked back to Thema Torbik, the sky deepening into shades of violet and rose. As they rode through the familiar winding road home, the breeze brushed against their faces, carrying the scent of wet soil and woods. They stopped by the school gate where Maya was waiting with her small backpack, standing on tiptoe to look for them. The moment she saw the motorbike, she waved with both hands, her voice bright with joy. Mummy, Uncle Day, Huan waved back, her heart softening instantly. Maya ran to them, her laughter rising above the hum of the evening traffic. Did you bring something? She asked eagerly, spotting the chicken. We did, Dee said, lifting it slightly with a grin. We're going to have grilled chicken tonight. You like that, don't you? Yes. Maya clapped her hands. I'll help Mummy cook. One load brushing the dust from Herdita's cheek. You'll help by staying out of the smoke, little one, she teased. They rode home under the Dominsky, the first stars beginning to appear above the ridge. The road was quiet except for the steady rhythm of Thema Torbik and the soft hum of the night. Between them lingered the faint warmth of shared peace, the kind that comes after long storms. When the heart finally learns to rest, by the time they reached home, the sky had deepened into a velvet blue, and the first crickets had begun their evenings. The yard glowed softly under throne, light spilling from the kitchen window. Smoke from the small clay stove arose lazily into the night, carrying the scent of marinated chicken and lemongrass through the still air. Maya's slaughter echoed from the porch as she chased after a flickering moth, her bare feet pattering softly against the cool tiles. Wuin crouched by the fire, turning the chicken slowly over. The crackle of fat meeting flamey mingled with the occasional hiss of the night wind. Her face lit by the orange firelight looked peaceful, tired, but Day emerged from the back, freshly bathed, his hair still damp and combed neatly. He sat down beside her, handing her a small cup of tea he had just poured. It smells amazing, he said, watching the golden skin crisp under theft. You always make it taste better than anyone else. Juan smiled, brushing a stray wisp of hair from her cheek. It's the same recipe as always. Maybe it just tastes better today. Day chuckled softly, his gaze lingering on her profile in the light. Maybe because today's different. Hesed, feels like I finally got to close an old door. She didn't look at him right away, only turned to skewer one last time before answering. Sameta mess closing one door makes room for another to open. Maya ran up then, her face flushed with excitement. Is it ready, Mummy? I'm hungry. Juan laughed, cutting a small piece to test. Almost, sweetheart. Go wash your hands first. Dee stood, ruffling Maya's hair as she shedded it inside. When the meal was finally laid out on the low table, the chicken golden and fragrant, rice steaming gently beside slices of cucumber, they all sat closer together. The oil lamp flickered softly above, casting tender shadows that swayed like breathing. Tay raised his small glass of rice wine toward Huain.2 today, he said, his voice steady but soft. Two endings that lead to begin. She met his eyes and clinkered at her cup lightly against his. To peace, she replied. Maya clapped her hands, smiling brightly. To family, she added, and the two adults couldn't help but laugh. The night settled around them, gently and wide, as if the mountains themselves were exhaling. Between bites and quiet smiles, the warmth of the moment rapid-airing them like a long-awaited comfort. Then, with a teasing glint in his eye, Day leaned toward Maya and said, You know, kid, I might be marrying your mum soon. Maya froze for a second, eyes wide, then squealed in delight. Really, then I'll wear a princess dress. One load, her cheeks flushed from bonfire and the sudden rush of emotion. Eat your chicken first, little princess, she said, pretending to scold, tunable to hide her smile. Outside, the night wind brushed gently through the bamboo, carrying away the last smoke off the fire. Inside, the laughter lingered, a fragile luminous thing like a promise softly taking root beneath the quiet